Everyone, welcome to another episode of Dynasty Underdog. I'm your host, Uriah Dawkins, in a different square up here than I normally am. I'm with Billy Beeman and Jake Kornblum. What's up, guys?
Not much. I think Jake left and came back, and that
Yeah.
messed up the order. But not much, man. We're in the thick of it now, dude. I feel like really kind of seeing where your teams are, right? With these wins and losses each week, you're like, okay, I can envision where this is going at this point. So, yeah, it's an interesting time in the year. Really fun time in the year. But yeah, I'm enjoying the Drake May hype. I'm enjoying all that stuff, and also got to give a shout out to Jake. Scott Fishbowl, he's way up there in the rankings. Very high. Top 50, should we say?
Top 50? Yeah.
Top
back
50?
up in it. Yeah.
Strong,
I was at
strong,
27, I think, at one point, and then I dropped into like 69, which I wanted to kind of stay at, but that's fine.
That's your goal. That's the threshold. Yeah, no, I like where you're at now. Yeah, keep pushing for it, man. 15-1. I saw that record. It's pretty strong.
Man, the week I lost that one, like I beat the median, but the week that I lost was it was painful. It was all down to me and shitty decision making, unfortunately. But
that's the worst. That's the worst.
I made a last minute decision to bench Ken Walker for Mike Evans, and Mike Evans clearly scored me 0 points on. If he would have caught that pass, the one where he ends up breaking his clavicle, I actually would have won. But he's. I was literally just about to say he's such a little pussy. Couldn't help me in my charity fantasy football league. That motherfucker. I'll never draft Mike Evans again.
Oh my goodness! I'm on a five game win streak in Scott Fishbowl, so I'm making a run to at least like get in the playoffs. Maybe we'll see what happens. But yeah, fun stuff. We can jump into the news and nonsense though, or if anybody else has anything to say.
No.
It's all bad. So news and nonsense. Some of the big stuff. Obviously the people. Your favorite running back, Cam Skataboo. Has a boo-boo. So
has a boo-boo.
Yeah,
Cam Skataboo. Yeah. Okay, got it.
So it's not a laughing matter, but Cam's out for the year. ACL, MCL, one of the two. Jake probably has a better idea of exactly what happened, but either way,
drop tackle.
Sure.
It was pretty close.
He's out for the season. So
yeah.
It was. He didn't. Did he have the ball? It was thrown to him, right? And it was deflected.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
He caught the ball. Like he was in the process of trying to catch the ball, drops it, and then basically linebacker
Foot caught up under. Yeah.
Tackled him. Did the hip drop action? I won't call it a true hip drop tackle. Hip drop action catches Cam's foot underneath him, and then the ankle is just gone.
Yeah. It felt more incidental. Not that matters, but anyway. It definitely the motion of it. I guess you're right. It technically was, but yeah, terrible for Skataboo. We're gonna talk about him probably in one of our main segments today more, but really I think is gonna hurt his long term value, and it's like it's just hard to see. I mean, I definitely don't think it was a dislocated ankle. We don't know anymore if it was broken. We don't know about ligament damage or anything like that. It definitely potentially could come back and be a similar form, but not guaranteed. So I think that's the worry. And there's other concerns there as well. Draft capital and all that stuff. So we can get into it more in a minute. Or anybody have thoughts now on how this impacts things?
The only thing I'll say. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, I was just gonna make the comment on the injury itself. The biggest issue in the NFL, I would say, when it comes to post-major injuries is the actual credibility of the reporting. So we actually don't find out about like what actually happens to the players typically until probably a year from now or like start of next season when he's starting to train again, and he'll probably come out and talk about it. But until then, it's just like, I've heard things like, oh, he had a clean break. Oh, he tore 3 ligaments in his ankle. Oh, he had, a partial break here and a torn ligament. And it's like literally the reporting is so inaccurate and all over the place that it's just like, it's better to not even guess what is wrong with him. Just he's going to be out for the season and what the impact is going to be. Sorry, you're right. Go ahead.
No, that's fair. That's probably been better what I was going to say. I was just going to say, try to compare it to like Tony Pollard hip drop tackle in the playoffs against the 49ers. And he was able to come back and play the next year for Dallas, but clearly wasn't right. So it wasn't until the following season where he's playing for the Titans where it's like, okay, that looks some semblance of more normal. So,
yeah, and he'll be 26 by that time.
Pretty low. So, but we'll see. But it's Cam, so who knows, right? That guy's hard.
Yeah.
All right. Another menace. This guy, quote unquote, looks like he eats people when he runs. Let's say Jordan Lewis said that. He's like, man, Pacheco runs like he eats people. Like, but Pacheco, MCL.
Has he seen people who eat people run a certain like? That's hilarious. That's amazing. Oh my goodness.
But yeah, Pacheco, MCL. We'll see. Obviously, Kareem Hunt benefited a lot from that in the game last night that we saw. But this is like a positive. It moves Brashard Smith up, if nonetheless. Am I super excited about Brashard Smith? I don't know, but it does give us something to be excited about, at least.
I will say there was a couple runs. At least one for sure, but it felt like there was a couple runs that were called back from Brashard Smith. There was one that was at least like a 10+ yard carry, I think, that was brought back on a hold. So like he's still flashing, in my opinion, and so this only is going to, I think, accelerate any opportunities that he'd get. But that's really all you're looking for here. Any thoughts, Jake?
Yeah, I have a question for both of you. Who's going to break out sooner, Brashard Smith or Travion Henderson?
Probably Smith.
Honestly, if Travion Henderson didn't fumble at the 1 this week, he would have broken out this week. So I think Travion, I would answer Travion Henderson because technically he should have already broken out this week. He had 10 for 75. He looked pretty good. They used him in a lot. The usage was a lot better, put it that way, in terms of the situations they were putting him in. Doesn't fumble at the 1, he probably ends that game with 16, 17 fantasy points or something like that. And you're talking about his first, 100-yard touchdown game, something like that, around that. And so I think it's a whole different look. But yeah, that's my answer.
Yeah. That's fair. I think it's a really interesting situation in both spaces. But yeah, I think that Pacheco's injury is an MCL sprain, right? So we're talking about week to week with not a real designation of like when he'll be back. Brashard Smith, I think, will have a bigger role for sure, but it'll be interesting to see like what that actually does to his value and how it fluctuates over the next 3 to 4 weeks once Pacheco is back, if it isn't a sustained injury.
For sure.
Fair.
Okay, all right, well, real quick, before we move on here, Tony said, you see the Kyle Duggar trade, Billy? Yes, I saw the Kyle Duggar trade. That's 2 second-round picks turned into 6th-round picks today. So doesn't feel great. Just highlights how poorly the Patriots have drafted in recent years. That's all I'll say. Yeah, neither of those guys have been great. Kyle Duggar can't cover, and Keon White's just a guy. He's not bad, but like, I don't know. He's not this organization or this regime's guy. So they're gone.
Excellent. All right. So moving on to the topic. So rookie value gauge when the price is too damn high on specific prospects. This is a link from Reddit. So the post was, hey, I got offered this. I'm currently last and would love these draft picks. This guy was offered pre-Cam Skateboot injury, by the way. He was offered a 26 first and another 26 first. So 2 times 26 firsts for Travis Kelce and Cam Skateboot. What would your advice been to him pre-Cam Skateboot? Jake.
Yeah, this is a really interesting scenario. I think we're looking at a conversation around like not Cam Skattebo, the individual, but Cam Skattebo, the rookie performer that I think was almost exceeding expectations in terms of fantasy point scoring. Maybe not necessarily exceeding expectations of like how he played or his general NFL impact, but truthfully, fantasy scoring, I think it was above expectation. And this conversation kind of would love to push down the narrative of like, how do we approach guys like Cam Skattebo and their early NFL success? And, in the actual prompt or caption of the post, the individual talks about how the 2 firsts were projected to be early first as well, which makes it even crazier to me. But basically, they sat on the trade and didn't end up accepting because they were afraid that they were getting off of Cam Scadaboo too early. And, that's a completely reasonable feeling, I think, to feel. Like, I do think that we need to be empathetic to a lot of people who are either playing this game for the first time or, emotionally get connected to hits. I think a lot of times we don't realize like the amount of work and effort that people sometimes put in to maybe finding Cam Scadaboo and maybe drafting him in the late second or maybe even the mid second and being like, man, I fucking smashed on that draft pick. I absolutely want to see this guy like reach his peak, whatever that peak might be. And I guess to your question, like what should this guy have done? And what I would do are probably two different things. But I think this like individual situation is like, if you are a non-contending team, right? You are not in a contending situation. You end up acquiring an asset like a Cam Scadaboo, or last year, Bucky Irving was a prime example of this as well. I think you almost always have to sell. Like if you are in a situation where you can make such exceptional profit off of an asset, regardless of whether or not you're able to sell at their absolute ceiling, you have to get rid of it. Like it's just where I kind of sit. And maybe once we kind of go through the process of each of us, it'd be really helpful for us to like understand what does that ceiling look like and how do we kind of differentiate between the two. So I'll push the question to you, Billy, with regards to like, what would you do with a trade offer like this? You're muted. Wow. Pulling a Uriah.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, what I would do would be take the picks. I think that's just kind of the safe play, but also understanding like what assets you're talking about here, right? Like we're thinking about, you have to think about kind of what all the different aspects that are baked into each of these different players, right? Like Cam Scadaboo is completely different than Ashton Genty. Okay. Like if Ashton Genty suffers this injury, his value sustains through it, right? Cam Scadaboo's, you're not getting the first for him anymore, right? Like that's not happening. You got to think about the draft capital, the age, right? This guy came in at 24 years old. Draft capital isn't really there. I mean, it's not the worst draft capital, but it's not really there. They don't have a super long-term investment in this guy. And so any catastrophic injury or, high-end upgrade they could possibly add could really impact that player's value. And so when you're looking at players like that, we're talking about Bucky Irving now. I think, Jake and I would sell on some of these guys a little early. Like I think we both probably sold on Bucky Irving early, which may have been kind of and I know that Jake is like, it doesn't really matter where you get out on it, which, I agree and disagree a little bit there, but because I think we could be a little bit more patient, to be honest. Like, I think that, people, once they get into these players, like short of a catastrophic injury, they're willing to kind of buy in as soon as they see them, score a couple touchdowns. JCM, any of these kind of players that we're talking about here, you definitely have seen the windows on them. But this is just such a high-end window. We know that Kelsey's already older. And it's hard to get any kind of first for him anyway. So too early first for a player like Scadaboo, you just got to get out and you have to liquidate. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that's the easy answer there. It's just, and I do agree with Jake that like to be empathetic to the person of like, I want to see this player, I like this player. I want him on my team. I want to see him succeed. I want to see him reach his highest heights and then get out or whatever it is. But like, yes, that's, a totally valid feeling. I have those feelings too, but you have to separate those from what's for the good of your dynasty team, unfortunately. Any thoughts, Shira?
Yeah, I wish I had anything, just similar or argumentative to say, but I totally agree. It's just, but I'm guilty of not doing that plenty of times because of what you talk about being attached to a player or scouting a player or just trying to feel right about a hit. Like I do it all the time, but I think the right thing to do is, to go get those first, especially since you're not contending. Like if you were kind of contending, like you might want to ride that Cam Scadaboo hype train. And he was putting up points up. I think I saw 7 weeks straight of top 24 running back finish. Like That's pretty good for a rookie. Let's see where this goes. Like, that's not an easy thing to get off of, especially kind of polarizing player as Cam Skatebo is, depending on what your taste is. But absolutely, I think the smart thing, the logical thing, is just to take your first and run, especially with the age of Travis Kelce. He's one of those things that, like, depending on your team, you just might want to be able to get off of now because he's probably not playing next year. If you're not contending, there's no reason that you should have him on your team. So I feel like there should have been smashed before the game even played.
Yeah, and I would argue personally that even if you're contending, you take this because you're going to be able to get a more sustainable player to fill that spot with those picks in short order. Like maybe you take a loss or something, or you probably, it's not a guarantee that happens. Maybe you get through it, right? But like if your team is built well enough, then you definitely get through it. And so I would suggest, making that move regardless of your build, just given that they were potentially high picks, even if they were 2 mid firsts, you're making out like a bandit with that. So I just think like a lot of the time we lose sight of, of that investment that these teams make, of the different aspects of a player's profile that, make up what they are. Like we just fall into, oh, well, they're scoring points. Oh, well, they look great and they're exciting. Like at some point, like Tyrone Tracy, on the same team. This happened the year before, right? Like, we can think of Kyron. Kyron's a good one too, right? Who actually has performed over a pretty sustainable period of time, but his value has always been subdued because of the draft capital concerns, some maybe, fumble concerns on the field concerns and whatnot. But like there's always a chance he could be replaced. There's just always a chance that he can be replaced, and that. I think Chuba Hubbard's a good one too. We just saw him be super successful, but the draft capital, the team didn't really invest in him. He's not that, he's not that elite of a talent. And Rico Dowdle comes in and he really impacts his workload. Like, I think all of these are good examples of this type of profile that you could fall in love with, mistakenly fall in love with and forget that there is some fragility built in there. I'm even thinking about, let me just throw out 2 more and I'll throw it back to you, Jake, of like some examples of this, other rookies. I'm thinking of RJ Harvey. Now, RJ Harvey has a little bit more sustainability because he was drafted in the 2nd round, give him that, but still coming in a little bit older, right? Like not long-term production in college. Like there's definitely some questions about that stuff. I mean, we liked Harvey around here from the film perspective, don't get me wrong, but we have to acknowledge that there is some fragility in these profiles, right? And so he's coming in a little bit older. And so if RJ Harvey gets a significant injury, a la Cam Skatebo, I think his dynasty value takes a greater hit than somebody, again, like let's say Ashton Genty, right? Looking just at the top of like the rookie class here, who has, an elite portfolio, who has, 1st round draft capital, all yada, 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 all that other stuff. And then the last one I'm thinking of is like Woody Marks, who I think falls into the same bucket as kind of, as Cam Skatebo, really just, older draft capital, yada, 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 all that stuff, injury, and we're done. You know what I mean? Or we're significantly reduced in value. And so you just have to be thinking about it that way. It's not like, that's not how I want to be thinking about it. I want Woody Marks, RJ Harvey to like just break out and be great for a long period of time and be, those outliers. And certainly one of them or 2 of them will do it. And maybe Bucky Irving is the one that breaks that mold and is, longer term sustainability in terms of play. But like, I still think his dynasty value never reaches like the ultimate ceiling you want from one of those running backs that I think people put him in tiers with. So anyway, I just went on for a minute, but I just think there's some good examples of this happening over and over again. And I think we forget about those profiles and let them slip by sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a lot of great points. And, trying to talk a little bit more about like what that ceiling value looks like. I'll kind of lead this over into you, Uriah. Like, what are we looking at when we're trying to talk about that profile? Like, what does the draft capital look like? I know Billy just kind of covered a little bit of some individual profiles. I kind of remind him of what this could be with Cam Skatebo specifically. But like, what are we looking at from a draft capital perspective? What are we looking at from like an age perspective of like where that individual player could be, team, circumstance, position, et cetera? Like, how does that all kind of play into that conversation. The only thing I did want to also add, just really quickly, because Billy did talk for a little bit there, there is a really interesting aspect to Cam Skattebo that he didn't cover, which is the fact that he plays for a team that didn't pay one of the league's most elite running backs an elite contract for a running back, right? So you're now talking about an asset that potentially has the opportunity that after 4 years, because he wasn't a first round pick, to be in a situation where he's not going to get re-signed by the same team that he's performing on. And we already know that running backs, like a lot of other positions, when they do transfer over to other teams,
go on to win a Super Bowl.
It's a little bit different when you happen to have the best year of their entire career. Yes. But valid point by all means, but not the point I was making. Anyway, going back to my questions, I did want to land on you, Raya. Like, what are you looking for, like, in that profile, and what are we talking about when we're talking about ceiling value?
So that's a difficult one because I think this is really going to be year one running back issue, year two running back issue. I think you get through a full season and you're putting up double-digit top 24 finishes at the position. I mean, you got to assume like the value is only going to go up on the offseason heading into next offseason because typically those guys aren't going to get replaced so much depending on draft capital. So, as Billy was talking about certain players or player specifics, like we have James Robinson, who had really amazing rookie year. And by all, like, I guess, sane people would be like, why would you go out and draft Etienne? Like James Robinson had that, like he's cheap and all this other stuff, but this is what happens because of draft capital. But like for a guy like Cam Skattebo, it's just that it's really hard to say what his ceiling would have been. Like he could go on to be Alvin Kamara. Alvin Kamara was a late round draft guy. Then I think that's what people are kind of hoping for. It's like, okay, Alvin Kamara had a really bad combine, was drafted low, but it's been one of like the most productive running backs in this era for us. And so like it's really hard to determine, but I think that you do have to make that determination no later than like the start of the second season for these guys. The guy gets injured that doesn't have that first round, second round draft capital. It's such a red flag. It really is, because we see guys get moved on away from very easily for that. And as you alluded to, the team specifically for Cam Skattebo is one that is not really willing to pay for the running back. So it's tricky. It's not something that you could really like put an exact date on, but someone writing like that, it's really hard not to just ride the wave and see how it ends at the end of the season. Ideally, like a JCM, if he had been doing better so far, like I was always saying, hey, I don't think JCM is going to get a second contract with this team based solely on when he was drafted. But if he could give you a really good one season or whatever, I would be selling. And I think that's just kind of, it's not exactly what you're asking, but I think that kind of is adjacent to the discussion we're having.
Yeah, definitely. I think those are a lot of really great points. And one of the things that I've just been pulling up is the general running back classes of the last few years. So for reference, going back to 2021, I'm really only going to talk through the top 4 rounds, because after that, we're talking about really, 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 really low hit rates from running backs. And the funny thing is that no running back drafted after the 4th round is remotely relevant anymore. So that being said, 2021, you're talking about Najee Harris, Travis Etienne, Javonte Williams, Trey Sermon, Michael Carter, Kene Nwangwu, Ramondre Stevenson, and Chuba Hubbard. I will shout out Kenneth Gainwell in the 5th round, but once again, don't think he's particularly fantasy relevant from a high-end asset conversation. We were never trading a first for Kenneth Gainwell at any point of his career, so I don't think that that's relevant here. Jumping into 2022 really quickly, Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker the 3rd, James Cook all drafted in the 2nd, Rashard White, Tyrion Davis Price, there we go, Brian Robinson Jr. in the 3rd, Damian Pierce, Zamir White, Isaiah Spiller, oh God, that one brings sadness to my ears, Pierre Strong Jr. and Hassan Haskins. Small shout out to Tyler Algier, and big shout out to 5th round success Kyron Williams. He would be the only one of these 5 draft classes that is going to be relevant in this conversation.
And so Damian Pierce is a good example there. Like Damian Pierce had a really good rookie season, and I remember going into year 2 getting offers for like 2 seconds for Damian Pierce and turning them down. Stupid.
Yeah.
You know what's also notable, I feel like, is the players who tend to linger around a little bit longer from those later rounds, especially at the running back position, because we're talking about here, I feel like are on the good teams. I'm thinking of like Isaiah Pacheco, right? Or Kyron Williams, like you mentioned, right? Like those are like pretty rock solid organizations. Maybe they understand they don't need to spend a lot on a running back. Yes, they can draft another one at some point, and they do try to do that, but they're going to probably spend a little bit later draft capital on it, those kind of things that they're going to try to do. And then you're thinking about all the other guys you just mentioned there. You're talking about like Houston and some of these other organizations that were really in flux when they drafted these players, right? And so you kind of know that and you're thinking of the Panthers too, like they're in flux still, like Chuba's not safe, like some of these other guys we mentioned, and I think that it's just kind of a symptom of that as well. It's not every situation is guaranteed. And of course, even the good organizations can get out from those guys easier and find other ones, but you do see them maybe stick around a little longer because they fall into favor. They're cheap. They're just great pieces to have around. And so it's not surprising that that's one characteristic that you got to keep an eye on as well. Yeah.
Good point.
No, that's a really good point. And I did skip over Isaiah Pacheco because he didn't fit into frame. So I appreciate you shouting that out. That's 7th round in the 2022 draft, pick 251. And funny enough, I also skipped out on 2 other fan favorites. Cleveland Browns drafted Jerome Ford that year in the 5th round, and the Vikings drafted Ty Chandler in the 5th round. And I wanted to shout out Jerome Ford for his small success when Nick Chubb went down. There was a window there where we're talking about Jerome Ford was touching a late first. That is like a prime example of like when you should be liquidating, in my opinion. Like when you're talking about players who basically are going against the odds of the hit rates, just play your odds every single time. And, that's my perspective because I happen to be specifically with running backs, a little bit more risk averse. I don't feel the need to take on the full responsibility or potentially the full life cycle of a running back. But I do think that when we're talking about hit rates, we do really see that lower end assets in NFL drafts don't typically stay for long. Same thing with Pacheco. We had a small window there where you could probably get like a first plus for him. I thankfully was able to trade him during that window multiple times when I did have him. And, he's probably now going to forever sit in kind of that mid to late second round space until he's no longer on the Chiefs and then probably no longer in the NFL, like Billy was saying, where he has a very defined role in an offense that they know that they can basically afford because he is relatively cheap. And then until someone is going to have to pay him second contract money, he's realistically not going to earn it, unfortunately. So to this point, I'll just be really quick. In 2023, very similar. The only person that I did want to call out here that goes against the grain once again, and someone that I sold high on last year, and I think it's someone that we're going to talk about in a little bit, is Chase Brown in the 5th round, 163rd overall pick. Outside of that, the remainder of the class looks about right. We're talking about Bijan and Jahmyr Gibbs in the 1st. You're talking about Zach Charbonnet in the 2nd, Kendre Miller in the 3rd, Tyjae Spears in the 3rd, Devon Achane in the 3rd, and Tank Bigsby, and then Roshan Johnson in the 4th. We got Israel Abanikanda in the 5th, Eric Gray, Jesus.
Abanikanda fast.
Evan Hull, Chris Rodriguez, Deuce Vaughn, we still love him. Zach Evans, that one's definitely an industry name. And then we got Dwayne McBride, Lou Nichols the 3rd, and Kenny McIntosh. And I don't want to poo-poo any of those names, but I do think that the interesting one there is going to be Chase Brown because we've seen multiple times his value creep into this world where I do think that we probably should have gotten out on, and maybe that's a continued conversation for the next piece. Lastly, just because 2025 doesn't really make sense to talk about just yet, 2024 2nd round ACL legend Jonathan Brooks. We got Trey Benson in the 3rd, Blake Corum, Marshawn Lloyd can't get on the field.
R.I.P.
Jalen Wright in the 4th, Bucky Irving, Will Shipley, shout out, Ray Davis, and Isaac Guerrero. Other notable names
Horrible
in
class.
this draft
That was
are...
so bad. That class was so bad.
Other notable names, Tyrone Tracy in the 5th, which we just talked about. Sell him when you could for a first. Last year, Kamani Vidal, sell him while you can in Los Angeles, drafted in the 6th. So, all of this to say, like, I'm not trying to profile players, but I do think that we can kind of bucket individuals into a frame of mind of like what that ceiling will forever look like, how teams will kind of value them moving long-term at bare minimum. And we know that Cam Skattebo is touching. He's literally on the cusp of that, right? He was a mid 4th round pick. And we're talking about a player who sits there with a ton of success, but like, what does that success look like? So let's kind of move into that next piece, Billy, because I feel like I just kind of talked through the detail aspects. I know you want to provide feedback, but I also want to be mindful of our time. So I'm going to give this to you. Let's give this to you. When do we liquidate these types of assets? Like, how do you choose the right time to do it?
Well, I get to say what I want to say because I feel like it plays into this anyway. But no, it's not feedback on all that. What I wanted to say is, in terms of ceiling value, I think it's really hard to determine. But what I heard you say almost every time for most of these players is get out when you could get about a first, right? And so I think their ceiling value, if you want to give it something, just in theory, on a lot of these guys, is like touching around a first, right? You want to try to get that if you can. But I think you and I have been definitely a little quick and get out maybe like 2 seconds or something like that, right? Which we're comfortable with. It's like, okay, fine, because we don't have to deal with the ups and downs and all that. But, there are the Kyron situations where it's like, if you let that grow a little bit, you get into like 2 first range and whatnot. So like and you can't determine which ones those are going to be necessarily. I don't think it's really, it's really fair. So, but I do think that a lot of these guys get enough hype to get to around that first range. So if, without looking at any rankings or anything, or going to the, the values and being like, where do they fall in here? I think you can say like ceiling is probably a first, but like it's not guaranteed at all. So you're somewhere probably between a second and a first, and see what you can do there. In terms of when to liquidate, I mean, yeah, like that's such a difficult situation, but I do think it obviously is build dependent, right? Like you have a little bit more wiggle room, I think, when you are a contender, in my opinion. You can hold on a little bit longer to some of these players, consume some of their points, right? Hope that they go a little longer. And if you lose a little bit of value on that, like it's not killing your team, but as a rebuilder, you don't really have that wiggle room. Like if you miss out on significant value, it goes both ways for sure. Like if you get out early, like, yes, maybe you may miss on some significant value, but if you don't get out, sometimes you never get out, right? Like Tyrone Tracy, you're never getting out for a first at this point, right? Like even with Skattebo gone, like maybe you're right. Maybe you do get back, but are you really willing to hold on to a player through this long of like a lull, knowing that, the only way he could potentially get back to it first is an injury. And then they're going to be looking for another guy to replace him down the road anyway. Right. So it's like your window gets really tight there. And also you're just kind of hemorrhaging, letting this guy sit on your roster with no value. So it's definitely a double-edged sword, and it's a tough balance, but I think you need to be a little bit quicker to the trigger when you are a rebuilder with, thinking about when to liquidate and get out of these guys. But if you keep in your mind like that ceiling and you're comfortable and you're, kind of gauging that throughout the season, you probably can find a good middle ground to get out at, like we're saying, 2 seconds kind of value, or near that first if you're really dialed in and watching things.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add. I would just say that if the situation is where you do have a running back that is producing because the guy who was preferred to be the guy ahead of him gets injured, a la Amari and Hampton, Kamani Vidal situation right now, yeah, we're all enjoying Kamani Vidal's points. I would very much suggest to pay attention on a possible return to work date for the 1A on that team. Try to be sooner than the guy you're trying to trade him to.
Yeah. I mean, Kamani Vidal's a great one because like this is the game you're playing, right? He just had a great game. Okay. I don't even know who the matchup was in my head, but I'm wondering if it was like a a good matchup for him too. But like as a contender, right? If you have Kamani Vidal, you're like, all right, either I can continue consuming his points for the next 2-3 weeks or whatever until Hampton comes back. Sorry, I'd mute myself for a second. Until Hampton comes back, and bet that he continues this performance and I can still, get out of him before that comes back? Or is he just going to nosedive, have a couple terrible games, and you get no value from him, right? Like that's kind of the calculation that you're having to make here, right? And I would say, and I think this is to Jake's point, is like, on the whole, you're gonna bat a better percentage if you are moving on from these guys,
Yes.
At these early points, even if you're losing some of those potential, points on your contending roster. Like if you're really a contending roster, you probably have something that can fill in enough, you know what I mean, in the meantime, and get that value back for that asset. So
yeah.
In terms of a contender, that's how you liquidate. Yeah.
If the reason you're contending is because of Kamani Vidal, you're not contending.
That's the money right there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Stats a little bit, maybe steal a couple wins. But,
yeah, exactly, and that's exactly what Kamani Vidal is. And I think we've kind of gotten to, I think the crux or the final point of this conversation. But the one thing I did want to just kind of close with is that I think we've defined kind of like what the guardrails are, right? So just really, really like closing it down. I think the guardrails are really between that first and fourth round draft capital from an NFL perspective. That is kind of the money point. Those are the assets that you can expect to accrue enough value over a singular first at some given point. Now, whether or not you're comfortable with what that looks like, depending on the draft capital from there, that's really kind of going to be up to you. Me personally, my own guardrails are going to be first and second in the NFL are going to have a lot more credibility based off of previous hit rates than third and fourth rounders. And then from that point on, fifth through seventh rounders, basically at any point in which they accrue enough value where I'm going to see probably anywhere between a mid to early second, I'm going to get off of them immediately. Just because I know that the fall from grace is just so potentially detrimental to their value that this is kind of the best way for me to be defensive against it. Outside of that, we've really been talking mainly about running back. So let's just keep this conversation around running back specifically. And then the other item would be, let's talk about the teams in which they play on. Like we know historically how teams approach running back. To Billy's point before, we know that the Chiefs, we know that the high-end organizations will typically not overspend at running back. So if they do find their guy, let's say Brashard Smith ends up being the guy at the end of the season that they show value in, there's a really strong chance that Brashard Smith's window will probably be somewhere between 2 to 3 years. So play that window accordingly if his output is worth kind of the squeeze. But if you know that you're going to be talking about a late round draft pick like Brashard Smith, and you can get out with a first at any particular time, don't play the game that Brashard Smith isn't going to get out snapped by another running back the following year is a great example, right? So like that's kind of how I see the differentiation between team profile as well. I think all of the conversation that we had here was like incredibly valuable to like what we're looking at right now with, unfortunately, the demise of Cam Scadaboo's injury. And I think when we're seeing these types of trade offers come in, we really just need to be mindful about how they best benefit our team. And in this circumstance, like the two of fantastic colleagues and co-hosts have said, I just said colleagues. Do we get paid for this?
Got to come in a suit and tie next time. Apparently, I'm a colleague. Yeah.
Only for Tommy. The only thing I'll add there is that when you're talking about your builds, don't play the risky game when you're rebuilding. And in this situation, this person was rebuilding. Like, what are we holding on to Cam Scadaboo for? Is he going to really be your anchor piece moving forward for the rest of this team's build? And the likelihood is no. Travis Kelce was also in this trade offer, and it's like you want to be getting rid of Travis Kelce immediately. He should be almost the piece that you're saying to yourself, okay, he's equivalent to maybe a second this year. So I'm getting Cam for 1.5 first, or maybe even like 1.75 first. That has to be the way you're thinking through these types of things, considering that your draft capital associated to Cam had to have been at most an early second. So just be mindful about the entire process. But also, I do want to just lastly say, incredibly empathetic to this, because I do think it's really, really easy and also really exciting to root for the guys that you like. I think there's a lot to like about Cam Scadaboo. I think he runs in a way that a lot of other people don't run in the NFL, and he was scoring fantasy points, to Uriah's point before. Like, you can't turn away production, because production is what this game is all about. But at the same time, I think it's about balancing all of those different questions into this one formula.
Great stuff, guys. Great stuff. Before we move on to the next thing, not on this, just a question from the listeners. Ricky asks, if Hampton's injury is longer than expected, how many more weeks does Vidal have to play to be viewed as a beneficial acquisition from this week forward?
That's a good question.
It's a good question. And also, I mean, Hampton's injury is lingering longer than expected, and there's no really return date. Like, I think week 10 is probably not happening either. So I think we're at least 2 or 3, 4 weeks maybe. So like, is getting 4 weeks of Vidal in a fantasy season enough to be like, yeah, let me go get this guy? In Dynasty, I'm just like, what would the acquisition cost have to be? You know what I mean? Like, I would have to be getting something back maybe. Like, if I'm like, are you giving up a late second to get him in a third? Like, is that like comfortable enough for me to like take on that risk? Maybe. It's really, I think, it would be determined, I think, by the price for me, and on my team build, right? Like, because like I'd be buying him, I think, to like improve my depth for a few weeks and try to, push for the playoff spot. So yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think? How many weeks would he have to play? I would think at least 4 or 5 would be my answer.
Yeah, I was just looking at when the Chargers bye week is, so I could give a better answer. But I'm assuming this thing takes.
It's week 12.
So there you go. I think that's your answer. I think if you're gonna go get him to get your points for the next weeks, I think you have 4 weeks, 3 weeks of hopefully solid output. And we don't know if you're gonna get what he gave you last week going forward. It's a risky one, but that's why Billy brought in Price there. So I think maybe a Vidal for your second and get a guy's third back. Or even another one of those rookies that hasn't really performed this year as well. Something like that. I would be cautious that what you're trying to pay. Don't pay for what you saw last week, because it's not going to be for the rest of the season. Don't think. I'm no doctor, but I think that there's a good chance that we see Hampton after the bye.
It's fair. I
think you're right. Smashed it, honestly. Like, the only thing I was going to add is, instead of a third, maybe try and add, either a last year rookie that potentially isn't performing to the level that people wanted to, like a Blake Corum, or or this year, I was thinking of Ollie Gordon. Like, I think I've been trying to get Ollie Gordon almost every single trade offer that I can, because I think that that's just like the perfect example of someone who I don't think has a ton of ceiling value, but he's the guy that if he gets an opportunity, he easily turns into an additional second. So you're basically not even worrying about Vidal anymore, because he probably goes back to being fairy dust once Marion Hampton's there. But if you can get now the second back for Gordon, you basically were just getting a free rental, is the way that I see it. So the likelihood of the third then hitting for a second later on is a little bit more challenging. So that's just kind of the game that I would play. But I think that's what you have to do. Even when we were just talking about hit rates, right? Look at guys like Bashal Tutin. Look at guys like Caleb Johnson, who hasn't played yet. Look at guys like Trevor Etienne in Carolina. Look at guys like Jarquez Hunter, Dylan Sampson. Well, maybe Dylan Sampson's not a good shout, because Judkins just pulled up with that injury. But I think like those would all be, those are 4th rounders that we're talking about on the threshold of hit rates that all have viability. And if they do end up hitting, I think you'll have a lot more success going forward. And I don't know how many people really care that much about holding on to Trevor Etienne, Jarquez Hunter, Dylan Sampson, Bashal Tutin. Well, maybe Bashal Tutin. There's a bit of a hive behind him. Caleb Johnson, there's Uriah behind him. Wow, that sounds provocative. But yeah.
Okay.
Behind him.
All right.
Right. Yeah. Position's important.
Oh my goodness. All right, I'm gonna just move into the next topic here.
It's got to be Billy's.
We've been going. Yeah, it's mine. That's why I'm moving into it. All right. Why is it got to be mine? Because it's Trevion Henderson.
Yeah.
All right. So coulda, shoulda, woulda, or shouldn't. So just this is like what I was thinking about here was kind of like regret after you don't make a trade, right? The week after, and I just feel like people go through these emotions, right? So I just want to talk through if we still feel how we felt prior to this week's happenings, right? So I received an offer in a league, my Trevion Henderson, and a 27 third for Kelsey and Chase Brown. All right, strong contending roster. I threw up a poll in the DU Discord. It was 75% on the Henderson side. I was kind of surprised. I mean, when I saw the offer come, I was like, look, Chase Brown's already hit, right? Technically, and then you get the points. Obviously, I'm a contender. Kelsey's probably going to still score points. He obviously did this week. He went off, and then Chase Brown also went off, right? But I obviously sent this to the Discord because I'm having hesitation. I'm thinking like, but Henderson could just be a hit, you know, like a massive hit. Like we haven't really fully realized, you know, his value, and he just had a pretty good week, as I said at the beginning of the show, right? He could have really broken out this week already. So do we still feel the same as we did last week? Would you have taken the Kelsey Chase side, just kind of hindsight, you know, Monday morning quarterbacking this thing? Or are you still comfortable in your position? I don't know where you voted, Uriah, or if you voted on this.
I didn't see this one.
Okay, yeah, but Jake, I think, voted on the Henderson side. And so, yeah, what do you guys think?
I mean, it's because the name Trevion Henderson right now, and nobody's really got off of him. Like, not really. I mean, so he does hold a lot of value there still. But the thing that gets me is the strong contending thing, right? So it seems to me like you could sell a really, really shiny black box and a future third and get those points on your strong contender. Chase Brown, though, that's been a really hard buy until, you know, Joe Flacco showed up and just started like changing the whole situation there, which when this offer was sent to you, I think you only had 1 week of that. Right. Which is
and it wasn't that great. And he went like 10 for 100 and it was like 10 points or something like that. He maybe caught 12 points or something. It was like nothing. But yes, you know, it was getting better. It was, yes.
So, right. I mean, probably in your mind, you're thinking this guy's trying to sell high on these guys and move off of Kelsey. And I love Hendo and it's a third. And so, no, I'm not going to buy into that, which is, I think, probably why 75% of the people said, you know, we'll just hold on to Henderson. I would like you to do that poll now and see what they say.
I know that's my point, though. That's my point. And it's like, I don't know if we should let the results necessarily dictate that, because like it could have been a game where Kelsey had 8 points and Chase had 3. Sure. Like, you know what I mean? And it wouldn't, or Chase Brown, I should say, had 3. And so like, I don't want to be super results oriented. And that's kind of the point that I'm getting into here. But I guess like more so with Henderson, I just feel like there's 2 things going on here, and maybe this shouldn't matter. Okay. I also traded Omarion Hampton for Henderson in this league. Right. And so also I have that on my back. Like, am I going to really eat all that value I just gave up to go into these 2 assets and eat more value potentially? Like, I don't think that's a smart bet. And I think that's not having enough patience, right, with these guys. Like, Henderson is starting to come into form. We knew that it was going to take some time. We know that for rookies in general, we shouldn't be impatient, and we should let, you know, some time pass before we kind of everything good over there. Like,
I just had 2 Chinook helicopters.
Oh, okay.
Whole house was shaking.
Like, you're looking out the window. I'm like, is there a war going on? Are we okay?
I live like 30 minutes from JPLM.
Oh, okay.
Joint. Okay. Yeah. Anyway.
All right. So yeah. Anyway, I just think we need to have some patience on these guys and not get out at the first sight of potential points, and just think about the potential repercussions that could have, especially if those guys don't score the points that they're, even if it's 1 week, I don't care about that, but over the long haul, score the points or get injured. If one of those guys gets injured, like, what you just traded for is meaningless. You lost the value on Henderson. You don't get any points. Like, it's just too much risk going into that to regret that not getting those points on my team this week. I won this week. I'm still a contender. I could still get into other points different ways. So you got to just kind of have some resolve and keep pushing forward. That's my message here. Any thoughts on this before we move forward?
Yeah, the only thing I was going to add was that I think you need to bake in that factor of players being able to immediately perform after you either make a trade or don't make a trade into your decision making. Like you can't face this like potential value fluctuation that is going to occur naturally within the league or within your micro market, because that is going to naturally happen no matter what. So instead, when you are making a decision about a trade, like I think you have to be looking in future terms and not in this like window of even 6 weeks. Fuck 1 week. Like this is a 1 week window that you're talking about, but like I do think it has to be much larger than that when we're talking about acquiring or divesting from certain profiles. And this is a prime example of like, yes, if Travion Henderson, to your point before, ends up scoring that touchdown, doesn't fumble on the one, you're looking like a genius, right? Like,
I feel a lot better about it. Yeah, I feel a lot better.
The interpretation of the value here is just it's too. I think we look at value in too vapid of a way. Not us necessarily, but I think the market does, and like that's how you end up getting ahead of it. Like I think you have to always know that the market is going to be incredibly reactionary, and so take advantage of the reactionary repercussions of others, but kind of like rest on your laurels that have gotten you to the place that you have or the success that you have, knowing that you either believe in the talent or, to your point before, you invested at a certain price to get into the talent to begin with, because you believed in it 4 weeks ago or 6 weeks ago or whenever it was. And that's kind of my additional point.
Also, Kelsey's value and Chase Brown's value shouldn't necessarily increase based on the fact that they scored those points, right? It's not like if I made that trade, I could go out and now trade those guys for like better assets all of a sudden. You know what I mean? Like exactly. It probably wouldn't work out that way. So it's like, that's a big part of the calculation as well. All right. That's all I wanted to go on there. I think it's a really instructive kind of situation that we all find ourselves in, where it's like you didn't make a trade and you're like, oh, fuck. And that could impact how you do future trades. So don't let it impact how you you made a decision for a reason. Think about it. You probably did it for the right reason. And so, yeah, that's what I'll say there. Some of the best trades are the ones we don't make, right? Whether it's ones that we sent or ones that we get sent. So yeah, Uriah, take it over. I know you want to revisit this trade that we talked about, I think 2 weeks ago that you and I did in DU3. We'll throw it out there. You can throw it out there and tell us your thoughts on it.
Yeah. So DU3, contending, obviously. Well, obviously I'm contending. No, it's interesting. This is it's a 12-team league, but it's 2 divisions. I'm first in my division. You get first in your division, you go to the playoffs no matter what. So a lot of this trade, or part of the trade, some backbone to it, is me trying to beat the other 6 guys in my own division, knowing the other division itself is a little bit stronger. So that does matter. So I was just looking for a guy like Diggs. This all started with Stephon Diggs on my mind. Like, I want to go. He had a pretty good week the week before. Definitely getting higher on the New England offense in general. And I was like, what is Diggs going to cost me? Who has Diggs is what was important. So then I go and look and see who has Diggs. And it's Billy. But I see where Billy is in the rankings. And I'm like, I bet he can move off a guy like Diggs, because, frankly, he's borderline. Probably make the playoffs, but it's not like he's whooping feet or anything. So I was like, all right, cool. And I was like, well, okay, in the same manner, he also has Kelsey. This could be a point where he has to make a decision. Is he going to get off 2 guys that are older, scoring points, and see if that could happen? And then I also notice, as I'm just shopping Billy's team, and I see
he's at the window. Just what do I want?
I see Dak Prescott, and I'm like, man, you know what? I've been dealing with Tua Tagovailoa and Aaron Rodgers as my other quarterbacks here. Lamar Jackson is not playing. He'll be back at some point in time. I'm like, well, shoot, what can make this kind of go through real quick where I can get Diggs, scoop up Kelsey, and also get Dak, who's kind of been playing out of his mind recently. I saw I had Lamar. I'm like, well, that's a little bit much. I'm going to go throw on a second here. I don't think he's going to take this for a first, but I don't really want to haggle. So I threw on the second. I sent it over to him. He smashed a set. no counter, and I'm not surprised because it's technically an overpay. I think my biggest problem here was I didn't look at the second round pick that I was grabbing. I just noticed that it had somebody else's name there. And I think that in our minds, if we don't take the time and we notice that it's not our own second we're trading away and it has to be somebody else's name attached, it's just easier to give away. So I threw on possibly one of the guys who's probably equal team to me, probably finish back in the rankings at some point towards the end of the second, as long as nobody else gets injured and everything happens the same way it's been happening the rest of the season. I could have got a better second if I had asked for Billy's. But that was it. You guys kind of framed it as why didn't he, if he's going to move off of Lamar, why didn't he do it sooner? I didn't intend to move off of Lamar. I wanted to go get Diggs. I didn't want to just send a single pick for Diggs. I saw I could get Kelsey. I'm like, this could really help my team as far as depth and everything else. If these guys play the way they are going to play the rest of the season, I'm going to win my division. I'm going to the playoffs. And at the risk of downgrading from Dak to Lamar and picking up a second, knowing that Billy most likely isn't going to haggle with me, that's where I was at.
Yeah, I mean,
I still think that Billy won, but
yeah.
It's a trade with Billy. Of course he won.
If I'm going to accept the trade, I may as well win it. Like, what are we doing here? But I think
I won this week because of it. So
I think that's great context. Yeah, the trade ended up being Lamar for Dak, Kelsey, Diggs in the 26th second. And that's 12-team Superflex, PPR, 0.5, tight end premium, nothing, start 10, nothing crazy. But yeah, I mean, like, again, a couple of those assets you probably won't have much longer. Dak will survive probably a good period of time. And yeah, so it's one of the, I get it. I think what you do bring up is a good point, is that you weren't intending on trading Lamar, right? Like, that's not what you wanted to do. So like doing it earlier is definitely, that's kind of a tough criticism, because it's like, but could you have made the playoffs without doing this and like waited it out and got Lamar back and then done it that way? Like, did you have enough depth? Like, again, this may work out for sure. Like, Kelsey looks pretty solid. Stephon Diggs is going to continue to be very involved in score points. And Dak is obviously having a year. This last game I don't think was fantastic, but definitely having a year. So like, I just wonder, like, a lot of my rosters, just kind of like turning it a little bit, and a lot of my rosters this year, I've had a couple situations like DU5, right? Both of my quarterbacks were out. I didn't have a quarterback. Like, I had Mac Jones. He wasn't supposed to start, right? Like, we thought Purdy was going to start. So I was going into the week being like, I don't have a quarterback. I'm fine with that. Like, I might lose this week. Like, if my team is strong enough, like, I should be able to suffer that, not give up a ton of value to go get who, like, that was going to fill in and do what, you know what I mean? Spencer Rattler only to go sit on the bench or something, and then, like, not score me any points. So it's like, or go get Baker Mayfield and then he scores you 4 points and you lose anyway. You know what I mean? So I guess my point is like, I'm comfortable being in uncomfortable situations sometimes with my fantasy teams, because I think that if you do that, you can create advantages for yourself that others necessarily wouldn't have, and also not give up like value to other teams, right? Unnecessarily giving up value to other teams. I'm not saying that like that would have happened perfectly for you. I'm not saying it's for everybody. I'm just saying that like sometimes not having a starting quarterback or two super flex, spots filled with quarterbacks is okay. Like, you can do it and you can get through those situations and maintain your value and keep some of those high end players. It also helps that you're a Cowboys fan and you just like having Dak Prescott on your team, right? Like but legitimately that is a part of like every equation, right? It's like I was talking about before the show, trying to sell Jaden Daniels for Drake May, and Jake is giving me like a nasty look, you know what I mean? Because it's like, well, it seemed like you were, but either way, my point is like, I'm doing that.
That's my face.
Partly because I'm a fan, right? Like, that's my point, is I'm doing that partly because I'm a fan of Drake May and I want him on my team. And yeah, I might give up a little bit of value to go get him. You know what I mean? And so like, that is part of the equation for sure. And yeah, but it's really good context, and I'm glad we were able to talk about it again. Jake, do you have any thoughts before we move to some other trades?
Yeah, the last thing I'll just add, and I promise this is not me trying to like double down on a take, I think this is just adding on to Billy's point, but also coming at this from like a different perspective, is like valuing your own picks in the process of making these trades. I think makes a lot of sense. Valuing other people's picks, to your point before, Uriah, also makes sense. And maybe like reframing, understanding what the value was ahead of time and not just like selecting it blindly would have helped know that it was going to be a late second. But I guess the secondary aspect that I wanted to make was like understanding that your first is most likely going to be late. There is probably a space there where you can get into Diggs and Kelsey for late first. Like that is a very viable opportunity to then think about, in my mind, the gap between Dak Prescott and Lamar Jackson from not just a scoring perspective, but also a dynasty value perspective, and like how your team will end up accumulating quote unquote more value moving forward, but also still be just as competitive. And so I guess like the way that I reframe it for myself is like, if I can approach this trade in a different way and make my team just as competitive moving forward, like how do I do that the best way without losing as much value? And I think this specific trade is kind of one of those where, to Billy's point before with the coulda, shoulda, woulda aspect, like after week one and, you know, your team winning the week, it is really helpful. And I don't want to like harp on the fact that we go back and we redo the trade, right? It's more so like, just because this week was successful and you did win doesn't mean necessarily like the loss of that dynasty value isn't still there too. Like that still does exist attached to this trade, even with the slightly amplified draft capital that you do improve on with the second moving forward. It's just you're throwing more darts at things that don't necessarily have as high of a hit rate, and you lose that value from Lamar to Dak is kind of the way that I see it. But that's the only thing I wanted to add, just because I was looking at your draft capital that you had, and I was just like, that could have been like a really simple approach without having to add the quarterbacks into it. I don't know if that's what Billy would have accepted. I have no idea. I
might have
know.
Thinking about it. I might have done like something, not exactly that. I mean, I might have. I don't know what the trade would exactly have been, but yes, that sounds appealing to that build. Because as Uriah mentioned, Uriah was absolutely correct that my team is on the edge and probably not going to do anything. So he definitely read my team exactly where it was at and was like, this is going to make sense for us, and he was right there. So. Yeah, I mean, the other thing I just want to say before we move is like the thing about not noticing how late someone's second is. That's happened to me plenty of times. It's actually like something you really gotta like, because it takes work, right? It doesn't tell you where they're positioned right now. You got to go look at their teams. You got to go like see where everybody's in the league rankings and everything. So it's like it takes a second, but you got to do it. And so yeah, just something to think about. But good stuff, Uriah. Good stuff, everybody. I love that we talk openly and candidly about all these trades. So I appreciate everybody. It's really, really good stuff. So let's hop into the trades and non-trades. Let's do it.
Cool. First one is best ball. Here we go. Konami Vidal for a 26 mid to late second.
Yeah, go for it, Uriah. What do you think?
I think I would like to do what we talked about earlier. Try to get another later pick back. So you're sending your mid to late second for Vidal. Try to go get a third or fourth back on top of that. Other than that, I think it's totally fine. Is what it is. I think that anybody who has Vidal would probably send them off for this, and I think that anybody who's trying to add points to the roster could do something like this, but I'd want a little bit back. I don't think it's too egregious.
No, it's good applying that patience there we were talking about. Yeah, this is the problem. Jake and I probably look at this like, just give me the fucking second. You know what I mean? Yeah. But I think in this situation right now, like, I don't think you're going to offend anybody by sending back, give me a second and a third. You know what I mean? Like, you for sure should counter it. So that's where, like, I think I'll speak for myself, want to try to be a little bit more patient. Is like, I don't need to get out of him like this second. And if I offer something else, I'm not going to lose that offer most likely of the second for Vidal. Most likely. It's happened to me before. But if you're not crazy about what you send back, you're not going to offend somebody. You should get the deal done at the end of the day. Jake, thoughts?
Yeah, this was my trade. It was an inbox offer. I countered it with exactly what you guys said. he said, I'm only going to send it for the second. I started looking at the rosters. I saw how his roster was built. This is best ball, by the way. So, the more amount of point scorers, the better. Right. My build has gone, unfortunately, not how I wanted. I'm particularly not very good at best ball is what I've learned. And I'll provide a small anecdote to that really, really quickly right after this. And then, so I just accepted. He was just like, I'm not going to send the fourth, just either the second or nothing. And I was like, honestly, you're going to have it all for 3 weeks. Like, enjoy it. Cause I actually got his points for this week. So he got, So unfortunately I still lost because my team sucks, but quick anecdote. Lapasaurus and I were doing a bunch of underdog, best ball drafts and all of that kind of bullshit this off season and right before the season started. And so he was like, oh, I got a free entry into their big mega money one. I was like, sweet, let's try it. So we did 5 or 6 practice runs with other $1 entry teams or $5 entry teams, whatever it is. And then we did the big one. Well, the big one is truly one of the worst teams in all of the pool. It's in the bottom 1%. And I was just like, Lap, I'm sorry, dude, but please don't include me again in doing best ball because I'm
best ball is a volume game. I don't care what anybody says. You can get lucky, of course, but it's a volume game. If you can enter 500 entries or you can max enter a couple tournaments, you have a shot. If you're not going to do that, your chances are slim to none. The percentages and how the pools break down over and over, it's ridiculous. You're like, okay, nobody has a chance of winning this thing. So yeah, don't feel bad. hot trash. Yeah, that team is hot trash. Lapasaurus in the YouTube comments. Welcome in, buddy. Oh my goodness, good stuff. Okay, all right, let's move it on here.
Lonely Hearts, 12 team Superflex tiered. So 0.5 to 1. 1.5, 1.75. Points for first down, 0.75 reception for point down, and 0.5 receptions for
ones. So the first one, 0.75 for rushing.
What the fuck?
One is rushing.
This is not. There's journals out there that tell you how to. Anyway.
Yeah, sorry, I should have provided a key. I'll walk through it. I apologize. This is a DU adjacent league. These are all guys from the Discord that wanted to run their own league. I am the commissioner for it. I don't play in it. 12 team super flex. It's tiered to Uriah's point. It's half point per reception for running back, full point PPR for wide receiver, 1.75 for tight end, and then it's 0.75 rushing point per first down, and then 0.5 receiving point per first down. The first trade is Egbuka for Drake London in a second.
Drake London in a second.
Yeah.
Smash. Mm-hmm. I saw that one and I was very surprised. Yeah, I think it's by far. Yeah, maybe by far is unfair, but it felt by far when I saw it.
I think Egbuka is definitely a sell. I don't think that you have to get out of him. I think that over the long haul he'll be a good player. But I think if you can explore stuff like this or a Malik Neighbors swap, given his situation, those kind of deals for those elite players, I think that's where you need to be headed because I don't quite see him as that. I see him as a tier and a half below, that kind of deal.
And the last thing I'll add to that is let's talk a little bit about the scoring format again. It's full PPR, and you also get half a point per receiving first down, right? So we're talking, this is literally Drake London's bread and butter. Don't trade away the better asset in the scoring format just because Egbuka is the hot name. That's just not knowing the scoring format, in my opinion.
The guy gets 20 targets, every 3 weeks. It's just
this was a Big Woy trade. Guess which side Big Woy was on. Yeah, that's all I'll say. Anyway. Yeah. All right. The next one, Jalen Coker and a 26 mid first for Jordan Addison.
Give me the mid first and Coker. I just think that's the mid first is kind of Addison's near ceiling. Anyway,
it's a ceiling.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, that's where you drafted him, and that's he's fallen below that, and maybe he's now finally back at that. But yeah, Coker in mid second, reroll.
Agreed.
Mid-first. Yes. Yeah.
And then the craziest one of the group, we got Neighbors for darts and 2 mid firsts.
That's a tough one for sure. That's a tough one, man. At this point, That's what, 3.5 firsts, right? Like for neighbors,
it's touching almost 4. I was
4?
gonna say it's touching almost 4.
I think you have to take that. Like I think you have to take that, and at the very least try to sell Dart immediately, depending on your situation. But like tier up from him if you're a contender, or take the pick value plus some players and shit like that if you want, or tier up as same thing. But I think you got to take the picks on this one, unfortunately, because we love neighbors, but that's near max value you're gonna get, and he's injured. Like, what are we doing here?
I completely agree. That was a really surprising one when I saw it go through. Maybe the assumption is that those firsts are going to be on the later side. I didn't do a very good job looking at it. I'll be honest, as someone who's not participating in the league, I really am just there whenever they like ping me, and I'm like, all right, approve, send me money, approve. Like I'm not like looking at anyone's builds and shit. I've been pretty bad ever since I did those solo pods, so I do apologize to the league. I have not looked at how you guys are doing, but I just thought that trade felt a little expensive. That being said, I really just wanted to also just do one final shout out to them. Thank you to the Lonely Hearts group. Like, you guys are killing it. I always go in there, they're chatting it up. Like, no mod, no commish. It's actually kind of cool. I think people kind of like just participating with league mates instead of having a commissioner kind of like ruin shit for them. So I literally just go in there, approve trades, because I just trust.
That is an interesting setup. That's an interesting setup because like there's nobody in the league who has a stake as a commissioner.
Exactly.
It's 12 people on equal playing grounds completely. It's a very interesting setup. Yeah.
And we got some good guys in there too. Shout out to like our Dr. Buttlicker. He's always a great chatter in the league. NWO Joe, Big Boy, and Miami Jeff.
Yeah.
Like we got some big hitters in there, and they're just all really, really good vibes. So just wanted to shout them out.
Good stuff.
Next one. And of course they're sharp. They're in our Discord.
No, they're super sharp. Yeah,
they are.
That is true. That is true.
Do you agree? We have Justin Smith and Jigba, Tucker Craft, killed it last night. JJ McCarthy, 2/3. 4 neighbors, 26 mid first, 26 early second. Konami Vidal, Chamir Dike, Tyler Huntley, and Washington.
Darnell Washington. I was about to say the fact that we can remember all these names is a testament to our degeneracy. But it's our sickness.
Well, I'll be quick. It's JSN Craft and JJ McCarthy.
Yes, I agree. It's actually crazy that there's multiple neighbors trades on here and we're taking the opposite side. But yeah, I would have to agree here.
Well, good on the neighbors owners for holding people's feet to the fire. Right.
For sure. You're getting a quarterback here, starting quarterback. He is. You're getting a starting quarterback here whose value should hold for a bit. Kraft and JSN is just a stud. So, I feel like, excuse me, outside of neighbors, everything else is stuff. I mean, the first is pretty good, but stuff otherwise, right? So, I think this is how you do it, kind of tearing up in all facets.
Yeah, this was my trade. I appreciate the kind words. Shout out Josh. We went back and forth quite a bit. Actually, I am notoriously really bad at structuring large trades. Like, if you ever see the trades that I do, they're typically 4 to 5 assets max. Like, this was a 12, 13 asset trade. I honestly had a migraine
for sure.
Yeah, this is definitely
special.
a Josh.
He cooked this motherfucker up. I've seen this before.
And I was like, holy, like, I don't even know how to fucking like value this shit anymore. But I will say the way that I broke it down was neighbors plus the first and second. Everything else was throw in for basically one of those thirds or maybe both of the thirds. And then so neighbors plus the first and early second. I had neighbors and JSN basically being a wash. I had JJM being the mid first, and I thought Crafts was better than an early second. And that's just kind of how I valued it. So at most, like, it's one of those situations where it worked really well. Once again, we're talking about like where the builds are going. And it was really funny because he's 4-3. And one of the questions in the league chat was, what are you doing? You're 4-3. Like, are you throwing the season away? And it was like, he kind of saw where the writing was on the wall with regards to his build and just kind of the direction it needed to go. And this was the best direction for him to re-roll, I think, in 2026, because the general like base of this team is still going to be very much in existence next year, even though it does sound like he's losing quite a bit in JSN, Kraft, and JJ McCarthy. The quarterback room is a little thin, but I think he wanted to try and get into the next quarterback cycle instead of playing the game. I think he even said he started one or two professional games now in 2 years. It's like, I don't know if I want to play that game any longer. And I think it's completely fair.
Yeah, that's why I was like starting quarterback. I don't know, but I didn't realize. JSN is wide receiver 4 in he's around there. I'm sure, like he's wide receiver. He's a top 5 wide receiver in Dynasty rankings.
Like KTC.
In KTC, he is wide receiver 4. Because the reason I was saying that, where you were like, I'd consider them, JSN and Neighbors kind of like even. I'm like in my head, I'm like, are they though? That's why I literally went over there. I'm like, I wonder if the market feels that way because like, yeah, but I feel like we're obviously like killing Neighbors because of the injury. Like if they were both healthy, we wouldn't necessarily think that, would we? But I think we might. I think they'd be close still, is my point. And maybe like my point is JSN is kind of quietly having like an amazing season. Like I don't know why it's quiet.
Is it quiet?
Yeah, it seems quieter than it should be, given how highly he's. You didn't even know he was wide receiver 4 in KTC. Like that's pretty high up there. I'm just saying.
Coast biased.
Both of us, no, but I just didn't think it either. I'm like, wow, is he really up there? And he is. So anyway,
in 7 games, he has 820 yards receiving, 50 receptions, 4 touchdowns.
He's having an amazing year.
I'm not saying that. I honestly didn't even know that that's how great of a top level statistical season he was having. So it makes sense why the market has him as high as he is. I wasn't just saying that in a defensive Jake way. I promise. I was just saying like, it makes a lot of sense why people are.
I just meant that like he's in no way being quiet about it necessarily, but it feels like I don't hear about him at this level of like Neighbors kind of like value. You know what I mean? And like it's just it kind of quietly got there is what I mean by that. Anyway,
that makes sense.
We got 2 more here.
All right. DU3 Cousins for 28 third. I sold Cousins for 28 third.
You are a smart man.
Yeah, the week before I sold Mariota for 2/4. So just kind of continuing off of what we were talking about last week.
Yeah, it's a great move, and we just saw how poorly Kirk Cousins performed. So I think you got a great asset for that. A great pick for that asset. Again, this is like you really don't, especially that kind of like Mariota. We talked about as a little bit of an outlier in this regard, but like you don't need to be going and trading for quarterbacks to fill in like these kind of quarterbacks. So just another example of that. Jake, anything before we move to the next one?
No.
All right. DU5, we saw Rashee Rice and 2:26 seconds, mid seconds for Neighbors.
Sorry, I saw what Jake put on there. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so Rashee Rice 2:26 mid seconds for Malik Neighbors. A lot of people finally coming to the conclusion that they want to move off of Neighbors.
This wasn't wanting to move off of Neighbors necessarily.
Well, you know what I mean, like willing to.
I will say that I think it's really interesting, in fairness, the timing, and I think it says a lot about like where teams are probably at in their years of like, I've been able to contend this long without Malik. It might be a great time for me to add some pretty significant firepower to my team. What will it cost me to do that? And I think that's kind of the thought process behind multiple trades that we're talking about here.
Yeah, certainly was. But this is my trade. I acquired Rice and the 2 seconds. I did a trade recently in DU2 where I acquired Malik Neighbors. So it depends on my team build. I'm willing to go both ways. I definitely think there's avenues into Malik Neighbors, but
amazing.
But what?
You're willing to go both ways, is what you said.
Oh, good God.
You're right. I got that too.
I know both of y'all just froze. Like I just killed somebody. Good God. All right. Anyway. Yeah, I mean, what's funny about this is I thought I was going to lose this week anyway, even acquiring Rice. I was just betting that this team had the strength over time to do it this year. And it ended up winning, actually. So I'm stoked about that. But yeah, I mean, I think just seeing Rice do it 2 weeks in a row, coming back, looking back to what he did at the end of the year last year, this is what he does. Like he caught all 9 of his targets, caught a touchdown. Like this is what I got him for. This is what I bought him for. Exactly what I sold Malik Neighbors for, and I wanted more than I think I wanted a little bit more than the 2 seconds, but I also wanted 2 different seconds. I wanted the person I acquired the Rashee Rice from, his second was likely going to be 201, 202, something like that. That's what I was going for. He was like, I'm not doing that. I was like, okay. So I ended up getting, I think, my second back and another relatively mid second or something like that. So, I still think Malik Neighbors long-term should be the better asset here, but I don't think I'm going to really regret this over the next, 24 months. So I feel good about it. I don't know. Uriah, what do you think? Which side would you have taken here?
Yeah, I mean, if you were making it to a point in the league where you feel like you're contending, and you've got there so far without Malik Neighbors' points since like week 4 or whatever the hell it was, this is a great trade. I think scoring wise, there's not a whole lot of difference probably between Rice and Neighbors moving forward, especially even next year. Like, you should really temper expectations for what Malik Neighbors is going to offer your team next year as well. So I do think this is the Rice and second side.
All right.
For a bunch of different reasons.
Yeah. I think this is one of those really unique scenarios where we're talking about like the differentiation between talent and scoring ability. I think Malik Neighbors is a significantly more talented wide receiver than Rashee Rice, but I think Rashee Rice in the offensive setup, especially when Travis Kelce is on the field, and that's really important, I think. So I don't know what that looks like over the next 24 months, to your point, Billy, but I do think that the way that he lines up, typically in the slot, usually either on opposite or near side to Travis Kelce, the way that they basically overload linebackers makes it almost a cheat code. Like, it is literally impossible for defenses to cover him. And it's really funny because I've had this conversation with my dad where he's like, Rashee Rice is elite. And I'm like, he's not. Like, he has very clear detriments and weaknesses to his game. But the way that they use him, and, a lot of people poo-poo Matt Nagy and shit on Andy Reid for some of the things that he's done throughout his career. But the thing that they can do the best, in my opinion, is elevate middling talent. And at the end of the day, like, I think Rashee Rice is probably better than middling, but I think from a scoring output perspective, you really are talking about getting into realistically a top 7, top 5 scoring wide receiver asset probably for the rest of the season if he actually is healthy. And by all means, maybe that suspension actually helped him out a little bit because he looks pretty up to speed. But I do think that this is probably one of those trades where if the other person has the draft capital, I'd probably be looking for Rice plus a first and then send a second back on top of Neighbors or something like that. Like, that would be kind of like where my head would be at, just because I do think that long-term, quote unquote, long-term value, as long as you're, willing to do the work, I think you'll be in a fine place, which you are, but some people aren't willing to do the work. I think that's kind of what you need to do to just make sure that you get into the value immediately. But yeah, I think this is a good trade for both sides. I think that this unfortunately puts you in a much better perspective to potentially win this league, which I didn't think you had going into this trade. I was like, oh,
all of a sudden,
Billy's cooked in DU5. I want to see him fail. And
all of a sudden, back in it. I have some really good players on that team. Just they haven't quite hit the stride. We'll see what happens.
It's a good build. It's a shame. It's a shame that it's gone the way it has. But you're still fucking 5 or 6-2. So it's like it's been good enough.
Yeah, no, it has. But I got Kittle back this week. I had a lot of injuries. I had Kittle, Neighbors. I had a lot of guys out, and now I got Kittle back and Rice and the whole 9. So yeah, I mean, I think you guys broke it down pretty well. What I will say is I don't think the first could have happened in this deal because he only has his own firsts, and he knows that they're going to be high. So he wasn't going to give the 102 up in Rice from Neighbor. Like, it just wasn't going to happen. 101, whatever it's going to be. Like, he just wasn't going to do that. So there was limitations on this one, and I did seek out, just so you know, other tier ups or like tier sideways, whatever, chases, and but those players are all on contending teams, so nobody's going to do that with me. You know what I mean? So it kind of got limited, and I felt like if I'm going to do it, this is probably the best case scenario. That said, I do want to just really quickly, I know we're running here, but really quickly, I want to go back to last week where we were talking about trading with people we know and all that, right? And I think that Jake sent me an offer, to be very honest. Well, Do you mind if I say what the offer was, or
no, go for it. Yeah.
Okay. So he sent me an offer of Odunze and a first for Neighbors like a week before. And before that, he had sent, I think it was a couple seconds or whatever it was. And I was very dismissive, of course, of the seconds, but I was pretty dismissive even of the subsequent offer of the first. And I think it was Neighbors and maybe a third back for Odunze and a first. And I still would say that I like what I did better for the purposes. I think that Rice is going to be more sustainable, and I would have liked to have a first, don't get me wrong, but I like what I did here. I think for the purposes, I still got pretty good value, but I definitely was way too harsh on that, specifically because of who I was getting the offer from. And I really need to check myself in the future, because like I could have maybe worked out a deal there that made a lot of sense for me, and getting a first back and knowing Odunze now, I don't think is he necessarily what I want. He's still a great player, and like he still has potential to his game. So I just wanted to really quickly jump back to that and give Jake some credit there, and also say I was a little bit harsh on that whole thing. Your eyes like, don't do that.
Thank you. I just thank you for clearing my name, that I don't say that I only send super low ball offers, which is what you guys agreed on last.
I mean, he still pretty much does that, but yeah, it's no, I'm kidding. I'm kidding, but I did want to give him a shot there. I did want to give him a shot. All right, last trade here. We have one last trade here. Speaking of low ball offers, anyway, go ahead.
It's of course my trade.
Go ahead.
Console Wars. So this is 36 teams. We haven't really talked about Console Wars a lot this year. Unfortunate. Anyway, 36 teams. It's 12 team leagues, and we battle out in the end. Anyways, flex everything basically. Scoring's pretty standard. So Joe Burrow went for Jackson Dart and a 26 second.
Wait, was it one? That's it? Dart in a 26 second?
Yeah.
What the fuck are we doing here? I mean, if he's Josh Allen, like sure. Yeah, if he's Josh Allen. Yeah, I agree with you right here. This is Burrow side so easily.
Easy. Yeah.
The only reason I wanted to add this, not because I got it done and I want like I got this smash done, because I don't feel that way in any particular way.
You should. Yeah, absolutely.
I sent this trade, it got rejected, and then a week later it got sent back to me, the same pieces and everything, and I was just like, oh, that's interesting. Like I was just like a little surprised by it, but I guess the other owner went through a week, potentially lost, and saw that they needed the points back on their team in the quarterback position, which is why I sent it in the first place. Because like I said, I like to think about how other teams could use like certain assets. It doesn't necessarily always have to like match up to quote unquote value. And I think that was what the other owners said to themselves. And I do think that there is some stigma right now sitting on Joe Burrow. I've seen a lot of Joe Burrow
injury stigma.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Not that he's like a bad person, which he also might be, or not that he likes to bleach his hair poorly, because he
actually
does
seems like a very chill, nice man.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. He does seem like that. I don't want to put that out there. If I overhype him as an individual, he's going to let me down. That's how I feel about the media. Sure. So anyway, I just wanted to add that I do think that there's like an injury stigma related to Joe Burrow that can kind of get you into him for what I think is like a very acquirable, very palatable price, which was Jackson Dart plus a second, maybe even Jackson Dart plus 2 seconds, Jackson Dart plus late first. Like that's all getting done, I'm thinking, to the right owner, and you should definitely try that out.
Yeah, there's a sucker in every league, and it might just be you.
It was butt liquor. It was butt liquor. Not a sucker.
Right.
But like, if like.
It's fine.
If you reject the trade though, and you're going to send it back, add something to it, because like you basically have told them like, I don't agree with your valuation. So like they almost like the person that you're sending the offer back to will almost always like take some of that. You know what I mean? They'll be like, oh, okay. Like I get it. Like the trade I sent wasn't enough, so he needs more. And they'll like, and there was room there to do that for you too. So you probably would have taken it if he sent back Jackson Dart in 2 seconds, you probably would have taken it, right? Like
I would have countered Jackson Dart in a second and a third.
You're such a scumbag. Oh my god, oh Jesus! But yeah, all right, we'll finish with that. Great stuff, great episode. Really, really, really good stuff. I appreciate it, guys. And thank you everybody who joined in the YouTube comments, everybody who's in the Discord. Love y'all.
Anything else you want to say before we get out of here?
No, we got nothing. That's it. Find us at Dynasty Underdog on the socials, and find the Discord link in the show description. I got that all. Yeah.
Down here somewhere.
Yeah, down there somewhere. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Shout out everybody. Have a good night.
Billy goes both ways.
Oh.
Oh, come on. What are we doing here?